And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. We do come your way on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We also have a special edition of Tell Me Your Story, and it's on Wednesdays, and that is at 9 a.m., always also streaming on streaming at Tell Me Your Story or richarddugan.com, the website, as podcasts are also available on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeart, and many other locations. We've expanded our reach, so to speak. I spent some time on the internet, basically adding more locations on the internet. So, and you folks are too, because you're actually reposting many of our interviews, and I thank you for doing that. We are also on YouTube. It's the channel Tell Me Your Story. No surprise there. You can go there, subscribe. I'm up to 26 subscribers and growing, and I'm thankful for those. That's wonderful. And over 35,800 listens on SoundCloud and the surrounding locations. So it's very cool. And as of our conversation today with our special guest, this past 7 days, over 800 listens, which, wow, that's great. And I'm glad you're listening, and I hope you continue to listen as well as subscribe. We also ask that you participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, where we ask you to go within, spend time quietly, peacefully, getting that insight from that still small voice, and also getting rejuvenated and re-energized by the stillness that you will experience. And if you like what we're doing and it resonates with you and you'd like to support us financially, we would be grateful for that. We always are. We have a PayPal account, and we have a link on the website so that you can support us financially. Any amount will do, and we have that set up for your security as well as ours. With all of that wonderful stuff aside, I wanted to show you folks, this is where we're going today. I will kind of move it in there, but you'll see it on the screen throughout the program. It is a wonderful, I call it, coffee table book, The Art of Symeon Shimin, with his daughter who has compiled this, put this together, Tonia Shimin. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. People are going to wonder, why in the world are you doing a program on art? Well, we're going to find out here with Tonia. Tonia, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And I hope people will feel that that art speaks and speaks to them after the show.
Absolutely. And that's really kind of the point here, is that there are so many aspects of our lives and our society that we take for granted. We don't realize the impact that they have on us, and we just kind of let things slide, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so we are going to spend a little time talking about that and how it feeds the heart and the soul of the human being having a spiritual experience, or a spiritual being having a human experience. Maybe we'll get into that as well. The first aspect of this, I mean, this is a wonderful book, I have to tell you. The art of your father is beautiful, but let me ask you, if I may, rather bluntly, why is he and his art so important for those folks listening to be aware of and mindful of?
So it's so interesting the way you connected it to what's important to people.
Mm-hmm.
And every day we walk on the street, now that we're opening up more so, but we're with people. We see their expression, we see their feelings, we meet them as friends, as family, and as people that we don't know, but we are touched by the people we see. We can feel something in seeing each other, and it's human nature. And my father was deeply touched by people that he saw, especially poverty-stricken people, but many others as well. And it comes through in the art. And if you are at all in touch with the visual senses, all of our senses are tuned in all the time. And the visual being, of course, terribly important. And the sensory experience that you get from that. So I feel all art has such great power because it's a record of who we are.
Give
And
me, go
it
ahead.
speaks to the feelings that we all feel every day.
Well, let me ask you in regards to your father. Obviously, you were there, I guess. Well, I guess that's what I should ask. Did you watch his art, him as an artist develop, or was he already an artist when you came along?
Well, he was already an artist when I was born. I'll briefly just explain that he came from Astrakhan with his family when he was 10 to this country. And so he was an immigrant. He had to get through school when he was not knowing the language. A teacher helped him a great deal. And he gradually became an artist. He had wanted to be a musician.
Mm-hmm.
But he became an artist. He started to draw after he was told no, he could not be a musician by his family. And he decided to start drawing and never stopped. And as a young man, he went to apprentice as a commercial artist, and he became a renowned painter for Hollywood posters, including Gone with the Wind, which was, he did the original poster for Gone with the Wind. When I was born, he was doing these movie posters. And there were other paintings on the wall, but I saw these huge, huge boards that he had in the studio that he was painting on. He let me touch one little flower once with a dot of red, but these were monumental sized works. So I watched him doing these very meticulously and carefully. And of course, I heard people talking around me about his art.
So his main forte, if you will, in you as you came along and as you were growing up, were these incredible. It's been a long time since I've seen movie posters. Yeah, well, you see them when you walk by the theater, but they're just not. Yeah. They're not like they were. Now it's all, of course, digitized, and they can really make things happen. But that was his main forte back in those days.
At that time, he had also completed a major project, which was a mural for the Department of Justice building. It was a commission he got from the WPA days. And this mural stands in the Department of Justice building right now. It's called Contemporary Justice and the Child. And one reason I feel it's so important is that it's a monumental painting also of fine art. And it depicts African Americans and women in educated roles and as students as well and as athletes. And it depicts what is possible rather than the poverty and the other side, which he also shows in the mural. So I feel that this mural is still very, very relevant to today for what we're dealing with, for what we're still dealing with and we're fighting for, which is human rights on all levels. And he was asked not to put in the figures of the African Americans, and he did it anyway. And it's the only representation other than one Black man as a servant in the whole Department of Justice art collection. So that's a reason why I wanted this work to be out there.
Right, right.
The fine art that's in the book came along somewhat later, some of it earlier, before I was born, but the fine art is lesser known. So I feel it speaks to what we started with, which was the feeling that people get from each other. And
yeah, and I do find it interesting in our day and time how we've got this real serious problem. And I'd love for you to elaborate on this as well, especially from your father's perspective, this real serious problem with our history. It's like those people who are really upset over the fact that there are those who are upset over certain aspects of our history being eliminated. They say, why do you have to always focus on the negative? And it's like, well, but wait a minute. As a human being, I've got a dark and a light side. And as a country, we have a history that has a dark and a light side, and it all needs to be looked at. But it's been the light side that's been so exploded and expanded everywhere that we almost want to push away. No, we really don't want to take a look at that. I know the Holocaust happened, but I don't want to talk about it. I know we were horrible to the Indians, or we were horrible to the blacks, to the Chinese, to the Irish, to every nationality pretty much on the planet, but we don't want to talk about that. It's like But what you don't understand, and I'd love for your input on this, is we wouldn't be who we are as a nation and where we are without all of that history, and it all needs to be looked at.
And without immigrants, we're all immigrants other than the Native Americans. My father would feel, I'm sure, what I'm feeling, which is that to evolve as humans, we need to really make reparations and acknowledge the whole picture, the dark and the light, and recognize what it is and make amends for it by changing our behavior. And this is a long road. Evidently, my father would be horrified at what's happening today. Because he fought so hard for this and went along with the people who did fight for human rights. He was always very touched by what he felt was equality and what he felt was important and right and wrong. And at the end of his life, he wanted to do a painting on liberation, which is exactly where the whole world is right now, trying to be liberated from something that isn't working and making it better. So he was not able to complete that work. But there are some images of hands reaching, which were studies for this in the book. And it was quite important to him to continue this fight for civil rights on all levels for all people.
Right. Do you have any insight from your perspective as to why we have so much difficulty, and why your father felt it so important to take a look at the whole spectrum of our history in terms of the lack of human rights, if you will?
There are so many levels to this. It's incredibly difficult to, in a few words, state what might really be the cause and help. But I feel deep down people need to, from the time they're born, be exposed to caring about each other and for each other and honoring oneself, each other, and anything that's in the world. And if you do not harm yourself, anyone else, and anything, then you're on the right track for a start. So I feel it has to do with an inner outlook on life and how things have occurred. If you're taught that you can hate certain people from the time you're born, you're going to hate those people. You don't know anything else. So I feel it terribly important that we work with children and consider the whole picture from birth onward. We have to make huge changes. And I think at this point, people are frightened. So if they hear something and they believe it, and some of us think it might be a complete fancy tale, if they really believe it, I can understand how they might feel. I might not agree, and I don't agree, but I have to try to sense, we have to try to understand what's going on in the other person and why.
Yeah.
And it's quite complicated, obviously.
It is. It absolutely is complicated at one level. And yet at the same time, I mean, I sit here, I'm 61 years old. I've lived through some very interesting, I'll put it that way, interesting times, as the old Chinese proverb says, may you live in interesting times. But it's like I sit here and I go back over the last 40 or 50, maybe close to 60 years from what I remember going on in the state that I was born in, Arizona, and Phoenix, in the United States, and even around the world. And it's like we keep doing the same thing over and over. It's like we never learn.
You know the song, Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
Yes.
And I keep coming back to that. And why have we not learned yet? I have one point to bring back to the book and the art.
Please.
I feel there's a great hope in these pictures and these paintings. And there's one painting specifically I'll talk about, which came upon, it happened because my father was helping a friend try to rescue someone who was being beaten up, and they were trying to go in and help them. And they in turn got beaten up themselves. And my father was kicked in the pants and said, "You dirty Puerto Rican," as the guy left and left in the ground bleeding, So it was a horror story, and he felt, just as you're speaking to the fact that these inhumane actions of one human to another are horrible, he had to do something about it. It's the big red painting. It's called The Pack, and it was his way of communicating how awful this is and how it shouldn't happen. I'll try to find it. You're trying to find it too. I've got a copy of the book right here as well.
Is it one that goes across both pages?
No.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, as you're looking there, I just want to remind our listeners that we are talking with Tonia Shimin. She is the daughter of Symeon Shimin, who has we have a wonderful, I'll call it a picture book, but there's text in there as well, of his art. It's called The Art of Symeon Shimin. And there are essays in here by Symeon Shimin, Joseph Woodard, and Charles, is it Donnellan?
Madeleine. And actually, it's Symeon Shimin.
Symeon.
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 Yes,
Symeon Shimin.
Yes, thank you.
You bet. Symeon Shimin.
Yeah.
He is featured, obviously. This is something that you have put together. What was the impetus for you doing this? I mean, I love my dad. He was the man that he was. He's still alive today at 90. He and my mother both still alive, just celebrated their 65th wedding anniversary back on the 3rd of June. But I'm not compelled necessarily to try to write his biography per se. Plus the fact that my dad was a very private person. I mean, he wasn't, my dad was not me. I don't know where I got this outgoing personality, but it wasn't necessarily from my father. But your father obviously was, through his art, he was outgoing. What was the impetus?
He was very outgoing as a person as well. He was a very warm, generous human being with a huge heart. But let me show you this painting.
Sure. Yes, I have seen that. Yes.
The reason I made the book, and I felt it was important to do it, is that I found a treasure trove of photographs of his fine art, which are lesser known. And these are the paintings which I thought should not be lost to the world. So my main impulse was to save the art. And of course, it's a homage to my father, but I just didn't feel these pieces, this work, there you go.
Yeah.
Should be lost. It's a little strange on camera here, but if anyone wants to get the book, you can really see it. And these paintings are very expressive, full of humanism and depth and caring about the human race. And so if one is looking for some hope, I think this might be an inspiration.
And the website, by the way, is...
So I felt mostly that I needed to save the art. And then it turns out to be something that I really hope will get out there in the world and give people pleasure. And so far it has. So
absolutely.
The book has actually won 7 awards recently. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I noticed that a Book Excellence Award is that these are just the stickers that are on the front of the book itself, an independent award as well. And that's wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful when you can be recognized and the work that you've put out can be recognized. Did your father feel as though he was contributing in a positive way? And I've hardly ever used this word before, but it kind of I think it applies. I may be wrong. Did he feel as though he was contributing in a positive way to the zeitgeist?
Yeah. I think he also very much believed he had to paint the way he needed to paint, whereas many of his contemporaries, or most of his contemporaries, were going into abstractionism in many forms. And he stuck to humanism in his art because that's who he was. And so he felt it was his way of trying to help the world be a better place.
Yeah.
Through his art, through his humanity, through his caring for others, that does come through the work very beautifully. He also did 57 children's books, illustrations for 57 children's books, which were highly acclaimed and loved. And he would get letters from children who would express their love of this work and what it meant to them, which in turn meant a lot to him. So your sense of why did he do it, or why did I do this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a way of sharing humanity.
Yeah.
And the expressivity of humanity.
Do you have other siblings?
I do. I have a sister, half sister, who is a documentary film editor, and she does amazing work. Her name is Tonia Shimin. Her work can be seen all over at Sundance and many festivals. She's won many awards for her films. And interestingly enough, they also are very tied to bringing out all the sides of humanity in a very deep way. She's a wonderful storyteller, and she helped me greatly make a film on a dancer and choreographer who I did a documentary video.
Mm. Has she put together anything yet in collaboration, in coordination with the Art of Symeon Shimin?
Well, when she was in college, she did a project to do a short film on our father that she interviewed him for in the film. And she shared with me all of the transcripts of those interviews, which in turn became incredibly helpful for our writers and for this book, because we were able to use many quotes directly from him. So there is also an autobiography by him in there of his early years in Russia and then in America, which is really touching. And then Charles and Joe were able to incorporate some statements from my father. So it really feels as if it's coming from him as well. So when you see the book, you get a real sense of the man and the artist and where the art came from.
We're talking with Tonia Shimin, and she is sharing with us this new work that she has out, The Art of Symeon Shimin. I want to ask you about your father's origins, Russia, obviously. How do you feel about having that connection to, as I was growing up, the evil empire, all of that stuff? I find so appalling. And yet I was married to a woman whose father and his family, matter of fact, his father, my wife's grandfather, actually was able to get out of Russia the night before the Bolshevik Revolution.
Wow.
Had he not, most likely his son would not have been born, and of course neither would she have been born, and I would have not had the first marriage. But I just find in some of the documentaries as well as movies I've seen of the various czars and that period in maybe the 17th and the 18th centuries into the 19th and 20th, very interesting history of the Russian people. Mm-hmm. What is your feeling in that regard? Do you hold a strong affinity?
I think there's definitely a sensibility about where I came from. I'm actually reading a fascinating book right now, which is 1,000 Years of the Art of Russia, of all the arts in Russia. And it's like, whoa, it's an amazing story. I've just only started it. My father actually left in 1912. So before the actual revolution.
Right.
And they got out early. And it was because of anti-Semitism and induction into the army. And there were 3 boys in the family. And many people, my grandfather actually was an antique dealer, and he bought out estates in Russia and would help give people things to help them, I assume for bribes, to help them prevent their sons from being inducted into the army. I'm not sure quite how it worked. It was a secret. But I feel a kind of energetic connection. I think every country has, as you said, black and white in it, good and bad. Mm-hmm. And so I'm horrified with the bad things and love the good things and feel very close in some ways. I've never been to my father's city, but I would like to go. It's a fascinating connection. And my father saw things as a child, such as prisoners being dragged being carried in trucks or buses or something with chains on them on their way to Siberia. And that made a big impression on him. Wow. He carried images in his mind from his childhood, in his life, of course, and it appeared in various ways in his work. And in some ways, it translated into his wanting to enjoy more of childhood, which went into his children's books, because his childhood was rather interrupted.
Yeah.
I've diversed a little bit from your subject, but
No, that's fine. This program goes where it goes, and I just kind of hang on.
And it's kind of fun.
Exactly.
But the connection is I think it's energetic. It's very hard to describe.
Yeah. Now,
It's not-
you may correct me if I ever mispronounce, but it's Simon Shimin.
Symeon Shimin.
Simeon. I've got to get that. I want to get that right
You know, he
because
changed the spelling because people were not able to pronounce it, and he started spelling it differently, S-E-M, but it's S-Y-M-E-O-N, and I chose his original spelling.
Right.
When the family came from Russia, going back to that connection, they gave the family the name Simpkins, and he was Samuel Simpkins. And at 21, he decided to change his name back because he wanted to be himself. He wanted to be who he was from birth.
Yeah. Well, I find that it is the height of respect to learn how to pronounce someone's name. I find that the people who worked at Ellis Island showed the least respect one could show. If I can't pronounce it, then I'm going to change it. You're going to be known as John Smith. You know, I don't care if you are from Arabia or Russia, going to change it. And it's like, really? Okay, then we're going to change your name too, pal. It just seems to me that then that's real important. And I really, there are times when I go back and listen to an interview and I got it right the first time when I first opened the interview, and then I butchered it 3 more times throughout the interview. Then I got it right near the end. But to me, that's extremely important, just as it is important to acknowledge who people are and what they have contributed in their time, such as your father, and this wonderful book that you now leave as, it's interesting, you are not only continuing his legacy as far as his art, but now you have a legacy of your own because of the fact that you are expanding the outreach for people to view the works that he has put out.
Interesting. Yeah.
So there's a nice little chain going on there.
Good.
Absolutely. Tonia.
It was so interesting. At the end of my father's life, it was really quite tragic. He had cancer and he could not finish his huge project on liberation. And he just said, "This is not fair." And I said, "I know it's not fair, but you've made wonderful contacts with people your whole life." And it's my way, I think, of trying to help that situation where he couldn't get the fullest of himself out there, but we have this, which is incredibly full. And so it means a lot personally.
So what has happened to this unfinished project?
There are paintings of hands, which were studies for it, and that's it. I have one, my sister has 2, and that's all that happened. That's all he was able to do. He lost his energy and he wasn't able to finish. But he envisioned it, and I think it's in there, the feeling of what he wanted, which was liberation and justice for all.
Yeah. Some people say that when you speak of using words of that ilk, and I use them too because I want to change the world for the better for everyone, not just a select few, that you're talking about a utopia, and that's impossible. We cannot have a utopia. And I just sit here going, who says? You know?
We can make it better. We can make it better. Little by little, every contact you make, if every contact we make is in the right direction, it's got to change.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things that we say on this program is that we're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around you. You know, all you have to do is look around. You can see how the old ways don't work. I have to say that when the pandemic was declared and the United States decided that it was going to shut down, it was just going to shut down. And everybody was supposed to stay home, and all right, here's your stimulus check, and da-da-da-da. And I was absolutely filled with glee because we were doing something different than we had ever done before, which meant and this was the other thing that went through my mind, we have we have new opportunities we don't even know exist yet. And many people started their own businesses during this time, whether it was making masks or PPE, whatever, other terms you want to use, helping other people, getting them food. That was one of the other things that I find fascinating. You talk about, we talk about making life better for everyone, and how everybody's always talking about how there's not enough. And yet somehow miraculously during this period of time, food just sort of appeared all over the country then, and they were helping people. I'm not saying everybody got fed the way they should have been, but you saw the news footage, you saw the stories that they were doing about this church that opened up, this restaurant that ended up getting shut down, and said, we don't want to waste the food, so we're going to just start making it and giving it away to people who really need it. It's like, see, there is more than enough, but it takes a catastrophe, it takes a pandemic for you to see this. Now, hopefully people will remember that there's more than enough.
Well, I think one of the hopes is that we found at least one silver lining, which is that people can help each other a lot more.
Yeah.
And also have had a sense of going inward some of the time rather than only outward.
And which is what we promote here.
I think that's another important point. And hellish as it must have been for thousands of people.
Sure.
There's one part of it, which is that one does have to connect with yourself very clearly and see what really matters.
Symeon Shimin is our conversation with Tonia Shimin, and you can go to the website, Symeon Shimin, and it's the Art of Symeon Shimin. The website is SYMEONSHIMIN.com, where you can not only see many of the photographs, but you can also order your copy of the book. I think I remember saying to you in our conversation before, it's a wonderful coffee table book, and it's wonderful to have it open to certain pages and so forth. And again, I'm scrolling through it right now and seeing many photographs of the paintings, of the drawings, of the and so forth, sketches that your father put together, that he produced over how long a career, if you will, did he have as an artist?
Well, he started in art school and apprenticing at age 15, and he died at 81, and he was still working. So he did 30 years of his children's books, and his whole life. I haven't done the exact math, how many years, but as you can see, many. He never stopped working.
Oh, and I have to say, I love opening the book and just gazing into some of the eyes of the people that he put in here. Now, I don't know that this has happened, but before we go any further, and I want to make this announcement to our listeners, that even though Father's Day has passed, all right, this program is dedicated not only to your father, but as a Father's Day gift, even if it's belated. But I also understand, have you already had the event at the Tecolote bookstore out in Santa Barbara?
That one had to be postponed completely. And as far as I have called in, they're still not doing anything. So I'm hoping we will have one. I'm certainly open to doing meeting with people in the library. I'm hoping maybe to do an event once things open up more. I did have a wonderful book signing in Chaucer's, and that started the whole thing, and that was great. We got off to a bang, and then boom. So
bang and boom.
I'm hoping things will develop as things open up more. And if anyone is interested in the book, if booksellers are interested in the book, you can get it through Ingram. But for the general public, you can buy it through Amazon and the website, as Richard so kindly gave you the information.
Absolutely. And we will be linked to your website as well, so people can go there as they listen to or even watch these interviews and learn more about your father. Roughly, and I realize this is kind of asking a strange question, but roughly how many works did your father produce in his time?
So this is interesting. There are many murals, but I have no idea how many. He tore them up because, in fact, Gone with the Wind, he cut up and threw out because it was taking up too much space. And then they wanted it back. And then he said, I hate doing this. I'll make it a high price. It was too high, and they had other people copy it. I have no idea whether it was 50, 100. I have no idea. And the books were 57. And the fine art paintings, I found pictures of about 75 or 80. It's edited down to maybe 70 in the book, but I put in everything I could. Some of the paintings were similar, so similar to each other that I chose one. There are other paintings, of course, out there, and I don't know where they are.
Well, now you mentioned one of the reasons your father left Russia was because of the anti-Semitism.
Right.
Now, I'm going to learn something here from you. Shimin is a Jewish name. Is that correct?
I believe so. It's also almost a Asian name. It's almost in Japan. There are Shimin. There's, if I spell it incorrectly, something comes up on the internet. A foreign language, but I believe it's a Hebraic name.
Okay, so let me ask you in that regard about your personal, I like to refer to it as your personal philosophy, in terms of your connection or lack thereof to your Jewish roots.
Again, it's interesting because we were not a religious family, although we learned some of the history, of course, and stories, and celebrated some of the holidays, but we were not a religious family. And so that has not been part of my life, but I feel a connection, of course. And again, I think it's an energetic connection, a compassion, a sensibility, something that's there that, of course, is Jewish and feels very powerful. But I don't hold it as being, this is what I am and that's what I'm not. It's just a sensibility.
You know, I'm going to read something here, if I may. This is actually a quote from your father, and of course, people can see this on the website, but I just found this rather interesting. I do not know by what mystery or alchemy I was transformed into becoming an artist, painter. When up to the age of 11 years, I wanted above all else to be a musician, as you had mentioned. However, when I was told in no uncertain terms that I would not be allowed to be one within a week, I began to draw the first time in my life. And to this day, I never stopped drawing and painting. What makes this event more strange is the fact that from the very beginning, I drew as an adult and not as a child. It was people that I wanted to paint then and now. I was deeply affected not only by our own poverty, but by the teeming life around me as well. Their haunting faces and their dignity never left me. I want to focus on one part of this where he talks about he was deeply affected not only by by our own poverty, but by the teeming life around me as well. I'm hearing, and I'm a country music fan.
Yeah, great.
And I'm hearing songs today that basically speak to that we didn't have much, but we had everything.
Ah, lovely.
All right, that's kind of the sentiment, and that's what your father is saying here. And one of the aspects that I want to share with you is I've watched a number of documentaries, especially that pop up regarding various African as well as South American tribes, the tribes living in the jungles, and of course, and what I notice is the clothing and the bright, vibrant colors that they're wearing, in spite of the fact, or maybe because of the fact, that they don't have the technology that you and I have today. And in many instances, they don't care, first of all, because they probably don't even know it exists. And even if they did, what do we need it for? We're doing fine the way we are. We're happy. And it seems to me that a lot of people who do grow up in less than ideal, whatever that is, conditions, still they have this zest for life, and they felt that, as your father says, the teeming life around me.
Right. Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful. And I think it's the key to what we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you can find that, you don't need all the other stuff. We're totally grateful for the technology to be able to do this, for example. But in so many ways, the people who live a much simpler life, who have not experienced it to that level and didn't know it, can be ecstatically happy in their lives. And I've noticed that there's such joy in the dancing and the art and the music, that the expression of life is what matters to them, and the living of life fully and connecting with other people. And they've got this community, this deep sense of community, which is very special.
With this book, what does that make you? Because I suppose you could say you're an author, but this is so jam-packed with your father's art.
I was the editor and the curator.
Okay.
So I chose the pictures. I worked with Isaac. I must thank Mercury Press International for helping me publish this, and Isaac Hernandez was the designer, and we worked together on it. But he was just superb in his layout, and of course I suggested things and we placed things, and we had a lot of fun together. So basically, I'm the editor and curator, and it goes under the term author for certain purposes, but I didn't do the writing. Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you then, what is it that, aside from this wonderful work that you've put out here, the Art of Symeon Shimin, what is it that you have done for what has been your career?
Well, my career has been completely different, or not completely different, because it's still connected with the art forms. I'm a dancer, choreographer, a teacher, and I've done a documentary film, as I mentioned, on artist Mary Anthony, but I've also done dance films. And so that's been my field my whole life. I taught at the university in Santa Barbara since 1980 and retired about 14 years ago. So I had 27 years there teaching and creating my work. But previous to that, I performed with modern dance companies, leading companies, and again with the humanist of the choreographers, Jose Limon, Pearl Lang, Mary Anthony, Anna Sokolow, similar to my father in terms of style and concept, which is my sister and I and my father are very close in terms of the embracing of a certain humanism in our work.
Now, there's another quote here in the on the website. The Art of Symeon Shimin showcases the intimate view of the artwork of your father, a Russian-born Jew artist, and his deep involvement with justice and the human condition. Would you consider him to be, in his day, an activist in that regard, using his art as his activism?
I would say not in a huge way. It was in an artistic way. It didn't make a huge splash out into the world. The books were sensitive, and the mural sits in the Department of Justice building. The paintings came later in his life. The fine art that's in the book, a lot of them came after 1956. And I feel that his intention was there. He certainly fought for human rights in any way that he could as a human being, in terms of this discussion and being with people and protests and so forth. But the work was put out not in that overt a manner. It didn't make a huge splat, but it stood for that throughout.
Now, it says here that this first book devoted to his art includes reproductions of over 65 works, his autobiography, Metamorphosis, and essays by artists Joseph Woodard and Charles Donnellan. This first book, is there going to be another?
I think it meant the first and only time. This is the only book on his work. Thanks.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not planning another. If someone else wants to do another, great. It's been mentioned that a collection of his children's books would be wonderful. There are 57. People can look for those online on Amazon. A few of them are still available, though not many. But it's interesting. I think that's what first refers to. This is the
Okay.
first book on his work.
A loving survey of an artist's varied career is also a review. And I'm just curious as to, first of all, if it makes any difference what the reviews are. And number two, what kind of reviews have you gotten on this work?
Some wonderful ones. They're all on the website, actually.
Okay.
Sam Ben-Meir wrote a very extensive, beautiful one, which describes the book and places it in historical terms. It's quite wonderful. And they're all on the website, actually. The Midwest Review said how important it was that this be in collections of schools and art, and the public should have it in all the libraries. They put out, I can possibly read it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main point is I'm aiming to get it into libraries all over the country, and if possible in the art school libraries.
That'd be wonderful.
So that future generations will see this work, and these particular paintings are not available except to the owners in any other way. One of the paintings in the Chrysler Museum, and there's the DOJ mural, but the others are privately owned. So that's where that comes in.
Well, while you are looking for that, let me remind our listeners, you're listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are talking with Tonia Shimin. She has produced a wonderful work. She's the curator as well as the editor of the book, The Art of Symeon Shimin. And we are very grateful to her for giving us this time, dedicating this to all the fathers. It would make a great Father's Day gift, in spite of the fact that Father's Day was last week, last Sunday. And I remember calling my father and talking with he and my mother. As I said, he turns 90 this year, this August of 2021, and they just celebrated 65 years together. What about his wife, your mother, in that regard? Can you give us a little background on her?
On my mother?
Yes.
Sure. She was an artist as well. And there's a hilarious story, actually. She said when she first met my father, she said, "Oh, you come from the art school where they gave someone a prize with a drawing for 6 toes." And he said, "I'm the artist."
I love that.
So that was the family story.
Yeah, what's funny about
Reunion, and she went to the Art Students League.
Ah.
She was highly talented as a painter, a sculptor. She didn't produce a huge amount of work, but I had art around me my whole life, so it was really, and they encouraged my dance, which was great.
I have to say,
I found this little snippet for you.
All right, you go ahead.
Which is about the book and written by the Midwest Book Review. It says, "It should be considered an essential and core addition to personal, professional, community, college, and university fine art collections." So of course, that's my dream, that people can see it and enjoy it and hold the book. I think holding a book is a very special experience.
It is.
I'll show you something else.
And as she is showing us, that means that you're going to have to go to YouTube, to the Tell Me Your Story channel, to see this.
This is another book.
Uh-huh.
This is a children's book, which I don't think you can get anymore. But it's by Isaac Bashevis Singer, a very amazing writer of children's work.
Mm-hmm.
And my father did the art for it. And I reread it just recently, and just holding it, it was a special experience to feel the energy inside the art. And,
you are,
there's music, you love music, and my father loved music, and he had music playing the whole time he worked.
Oh, wow.
And I think the paintings have a great musicality inside them.
The way you describe things, and specifically when you picked up that book and you referred to the energy, it sounds to me like you are very attuned to picking up on the energy shall we say, in terms of the physical world, in physical things as well as people.
Yeah, definitely. Whether it's nature, stones,
Mm-hmm.
animals, people. Yes, definitely.
Has that been something that you have been aware of all your life, even as a child?
I don't think I was aware of it in those terms until I was adult,
Mm-hmm.
and more so recently. I think, interestingly enough, through having various injuries, I've had to work energetically in terms of healing. And I think that called my attention to this way of being even more. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was always there. One of the first memories is standing at the beach, having the wind blow my hair and just feeling the ocean, and getting the sensibility of that, which we all know and recognize
Mm-hmm.
so well. And so I'm much more in tune with the senses than I am with the mind clicking away.
And if I may ask, as I said before, my father, a very private person. I don't know of his inner life because he doesn't talk about it, and
Right.
it's perfectly appropriate for him not to. That's his relationship with his God, if you will, or the higher self or the divine. But I am curious about your. I'll just say your walk, if you will, in terms of spirit, in terms of especially that connection with energy.
That's a huge question. I'll try to go there for you. I think my connection with the earth is I feel very much there all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and past, present, future even. There's a sensibility going on in me that connects those things, whether verbally or not. It's there. And as a dancer, of course, you're inside the body in so many ways. And of course, the word energy is part of that. But the sensibility of who you are as a person comes through. And the same thing with art.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to speak of, actually, but it's there.
Yeah, it seems as though our language is sort of deficient when it comes to being able to really express. And that's why I think when we do reach that level of telepathy, we won't be using words because we'll be sharing sensations, we'll be sharing images, we'll be sharing even thoughts that go beyond the English or any other language for that matter.
Well, here's an interesting moment. This morning, I went into the garden and we have blue jays that come really close to us.
Oh, yes.
And this dear little blue jay is there right near me. It won't, it's just right there. And I feel this connection,
Oh,
nonverbal, but a beautiful, beautiful moment.
have you ever had it land on your finger? You know?
No, but I did. I was in Peru and I had, what are these huge birds? I'm forgetting the name. It was a farm for animals that had been injured.
Ah.
And I forget the name of the huge bird, but they said, oh, if you are in a certain position, you'll be able to catch it with your camera. Well, this bird came over and touched my knee. And I felt, and they said they never do that. And I felt this spiritual connection with this creature, which was amazing, you know. But I think one can be open to these things.
Absolutely.
I have a feeling also that if one uses one's eyes and all of one's senses, one sees what's out there in the world and one is affected by it. And that's what happened to my father.
We, where we live up on the pass, San Marcos Pass, the Highway 154, we live at the summit, and we have nature all around us. And when we first moved here 15 years ago, there were, and the blue jays are still there. But back then, we would leave peanuts out for them every morning as we went off for work at the birdhouse. But they would come and they would land on our finger and then take the peanut from our hand and fly away. Well, today, the blue jays are not quite as friendly in that regard, but we have, my wife has named a set of crows. One of them is Warren, and Edgar. Edgar is the other. And we have had Warren lead us down the road towards Stagecoach Road from where we live, the cottage we live in, he will be right in front of us, sort of leading the way, sort of as an escort. And he's done that on a couple of occasions in the morning.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's because we've been leaving the peanuts and he's been getting them or what, but it's just extraordinary when you, like you just said, when you open yourself up, you know, and set aside all of your judgments and all of your preconceived notions about who and what this creature is and what they can and cannot do. Amazing things happen, don't they?
Amazing things happen, right?
Yeah.
Very delicate connections happen.
Tonia Shimon, I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much, Tonia Shimin, for joining us here on the program and for sharing this work with us here on this, we'll call it the post Father's Day program that I hope people will to take advantage of. I really do. In honor of your father and all fathers, and certainly a wonderful belated, even though I did call him on Father's Day, belated Father's Day to my father. And I hope that he will stick around just as long as he wants to, not as long as I want him to. It's not up to me, okay? And to continue to grace us with his presence and to be able to share with him some of the things that we have accomplished. And at what point, if I may ask, before we wrap things up here, at what point in your life did your father pass? So how old were you at the time of his passing?
He passed in 84, so I was 40, 41, 42.
Okay.
I was born in 1942.
And how, what was the impact? I mean, I'm sure there was the grieving and so forth, but what was your perspective on people passing at that time, especially with your father, who it sounds like you had a wonderful relationship with?
It was very sad. It was very difficult. Yeah, he had such a sad time at the end. It was very painful. So it took a while to kind of to allow myself to feel that and get past it so that I could not be dwelling in that too much.
Do you still feel?
It was as if he went too soon. He did not have the fullness that he wanted at the end. And that was very sad.
Do you still feel him? Do you still feel him around you today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially since I've been involved in doing this, I feel a very strong connection. I mean, I always did have that connection with me after he passed. He was a very dear man in my life, but it's as if he's something of a guide, and I hope I'm doing justice to the work in all of this. It's very important.
Well, Tonia Shimin, I want to thank you for joining us here on the program, sharing this wonderful book, The Art of Symeon Shimin. And I have three final questions I want to ask you, but I do need to let our listeners and viewers know that this program is here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times, as well as the special edition on Wednesdays at 9 a.m., streaming live at richarddugan.com. The podcasts have expanded. We are now, of course, on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, as well as iHeart and many other locations that we were able to expand to. And we also can be seen. That's right. You can watch the program on YouTube. Tell Me Your Story is the name of the channel. Just look for the guy with the hat, okay? Not hard to find. We also encourage you to participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, to spend time going within in that still, quiet, calm, peaceful place, listening to that still, quiet voice, giving you encouragement and excitement and all of the wonderful things that are there for all of us. And then if you are able to do so and you can financially support this program, you like what we're bringing you, I hope you do, and you'd like to support us, we have a PayPal account for your security as well as ours. And of course, if you wanted to do it straight through your account, it's to the email address of richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com, which is also an email address that you can send me any comments, questions, or queries. So with all of that set aside there, the first of three questions that I want to ask you before we say goodbye for now, the first is, who is Tonia Shimin?
Wow. My response, I'm just me. I'm a human on this earth, on this planet Earth, trying to find whatever is special to appreciate in every day.
Mm.
I'm a dancer. Have done many things in my life, but I think basically it's a hard question to answer.
I understand. Second question.
Big one.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
I definitely hope that this work will have meaning for other people, and that my father's work can become part of the known work of artists of the 20th century, along with many of his contemporaries. He's known for certain things and for the books and for the mural, but this other aspect of his work is lesser known. So I'm hoping that students in the future and artists in the future will see him as part of the whole picture.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
I think to live as completely and fully as possible, and to appreciate the extraordinary experience we have of being alive.
Well, I want to thank you again, Tonia, for joining us here on the program and sharing with us. And of course, the website, Symeon Shimin, SYMEONSHIMIN.com is the website. And again, I thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be with you.
I'm Richard Dugan, and I thank you for listening and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal.